Welcome to the Diabetes Podcast, where real stories meet real science, helping you take charge, not just take medicine. Today we're tackling a topic that might ruffle a few feathers, but it needs to be said. Prediabetes isn't a harmless waiting room, it's diabetes in motion. We'll break down what's really happening biologically long before A1C reaches 6.5, why don't worry, we'll recheck next year can be dangerous, and most importantly, how to use this stage as your biggest window to reverse course. You'll leave with a clear research-backed action plan, the right labs to request, how movement and muscle change your glucose story, why fiber and sleep matter more than you think, and what realistic weight loss can do for your trajectory. This isn't fear-mongering, it's clarity, compassion, and a plan. Let's go. Hello and welcome to the Diabetes Podcast. I'm Richie.
And I'm Amber.
And Amber, today, this conversation might ruffle some feathers, but I think it needs to be said.
Mm-hmm. Feathers need to be ruffled.
Yeah. Today, we're talking about prediabetes is diabetes.
Yes. And we've touched on this before. I think we've outright said it before, but I think it's important to say it and say it again and say it again until it lands, because it is so crucial to understand that they are one and the same process. You know, that being said, I don't want anyone
but treated significantly differently, right?
Yes, very true. Yeah. So I just want to clarify. I'm not saying that prediabetes equals full-blown type 2 diabetes, and it's definitely different than type 1 diabetes, latent autoimmune diabetes, type 3C, along the spectrum of the different diagnoses of diabetes. But in terms of type 2 diabetes, it is the same disease process. It's just earlier in the timeline of that disease, called a disease process for a reason. But it's important to mention because waiting is what turns prediabetes into something much harder to reverse.
So we're not fear-mongering here.
Nope.
Okay.
Not at all. And as with, I think most of our episodes, at least, we try to make sure people leave feeling more hopeful with an action plan, that they know certain things they can do to make things better, because we want to increase hope, because prediabetes is the stage where you have the most power to change things. But we really need to understand why the approach of don't worry, it's just prediabetes is so dangerous and misleading. I hear all the time that people go to their doctor visit for their annual checkup and they're told, it's just prediabetes. They get those routine labs and it comes back A1C, if the A1C was even done, and that's a whole other issue in and of itself. But sometimes if you went to your doctor because you had a little bit less energy or things were just kind of changing and you had more of a full panel done, then the A1C comes back 5.7, 5.8, maybe 6.1. And if you're fortunate to have the labs done before you see the doctor and the doctor has those labs, you might be told by your doctor that you now have prediabetes according to your labs. So cut back on sugar, lose a little weight, we'll recheck you in a year. That's most of the time it's the medical assistant or somebody who's calling you back with your lab results, and you get this and you have no one to discuss these results with. You might come back for another appointment and then you get prediabetes, cut back on sugar, lose weight, move more. Just very generic. Maybe even you'll get the don't eat anything white generic advice, and that person gets off the phone or walks out of their doctor's office thinking, all right, okay, I don't have diabetes. It's not that serious. I have time. And it might feel reassuring in the moment, but the research paints a very, very different picture. And according to the American Diabetes Association, prediabetes affects approximately 98 million American adults. And while we're at it, it also can affect adolescents and children at times. Not every diagnosis of diabetes in childhood is type 1. It usually is, but more and more it's becoming type 2.
This branch of metabolic disease is occurring much earlier than historically.
Yes. Yeah. And the alarming part is that more than 80% of people who have prediabetes don't even know that they have it. Remember when I said that, if you got your A1C done, I looked at my labs in prep for this just because I was curious. And I've had an A1C point of care done because I know a lot of endocrinologists, but it has never been done by my primary care physician in the labs. And I didn't even know that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I remember coming out of the American Council of Diabetes Educators,
the conference. I was kind of debriefing you on,
and coming out of there with the 1 in 2 adult Americans have either prediabetes or type 2 diabetes.
Alarming.
And just trying to wrap my head around that number. And I remember thinking it has to be undiagnosed. That there's no way that many people could be aware of the disease state and it not be just a 4-alarm fire everywhere. So the majority of that half the population is that third of the population that does have prediabetes. And the majority of those don't know they have it.
Right.
So
80% of those don't know that. Yeah.
Look to your left and your right. One of you guys has prediabetes pretty much.
It's crazy.
That's bonkers.
Yeah. And what's even more crazy to me is they're told it's not serious yet. Come back later and, we'll reevaluate later kind of thing. So physiologically at that point, when someone hits the 5.7 threshold, a lot of things are going on, a lot more things than people realize, because by the time someone meets that clinical criteria for prediabetes, insulin resistance is already well established. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about how it all begins with insulin resistance when we were talking about the blood.
It all begins with inflammation, which leads to insulin resistance. Yeah.
No, in our cholesterol episodes, we talked about insulin resistance being the biggest factor for dyslipidemia and all of that.
Okay.
So do you remember that?
We talk about so much stuff.
Listener,
if your eyes roll in the back of your head during any of these, don't feel bad. I'm right there with you. It's a lot to maybe listen more than once. Listen 3 or 4 times.
It's sometimes I even re-listen because I'm like, I did the research for that, but I'm like, what do I know to be true about that? And what do I need to dive into more of to really understand what I know to be true? And the research changes all the time. Like there's some very stable points. You've got your hypothesis, the theory, the research backing and supporting it. But as newer technologies come to learn more and research, more cool things come out. But
case in point, had some really good type 1 news this
lots
week.
Of really cool type 1 studies come into light. But these are still phase 3 trials for the most part. And I think it's important for people to understand the difference between phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 versus FDA approved medications for certain things and more advanced trials, more robust double-blind placebo-controlled trials
maybe
with
on another
larger numbers
podcast.
of people. Yeah, that's well, I think people have done those podcasts, but yeah, maybe a more general basic understanding of that. Yeah. But anywho, let's get back to that. So by the time someone meets those clinical criteria for prediabetes, which is 5.7 to 6.4 A1C, insulin resistance is already well established. Beta cell dysfunction, those cells in your pancreas that produce insulin, that dysfunction in the pancreatic beta cells has already begun. And your post-meal blood sugar is abnormal. You're having some spikes after eating a carbohydrate-heavy meal. Liver fat is often elevated, and perhaps most importantly, cardiovascular risk is already increasing. And the American Diabetes Association is very clear on this. Prediabetes is not almost diabetes. It is diabetes in motion.
So by the time your A1C is 5.7, is it safe to say that you're already losing the battle against metabolic disease?
I wouldn't say you're already, I mean, you could put it that way. You're already losing, or you could say you are in the battle. You are in the throes of the battle. I think that might be something I'd use that feels a little more true to me. But yeah, I mean, it is not this harmless waiting room for the real disease. So what's happening is this very eye-opening timeline where insulin resistance starts years, sometimes 10 to 20 years before anyone gets diagnosed as having type 2 diabetes. And what's more is your body is working overtime to compensate, and you have no idea that your innards are running a marathon. There's so many things going on. So first, your muscle tissue becomes resistant to insulin. Mm-hmm. Your muscles are supposed to be the primary destination for glucose after you eat. Yeah. But they start refusing, hey, return to sender. They start refusing the delivery of glucose. So your pancreas compensates by producing more insulin. I think of our kids when they were little, if they were saying something and we weren't paying attention, we're just going to up the volume. We're going to talk louder. We're going to act out. We're going to get that attention that we need by any means necessary. So it's just the pancreas compensates and puts out more insulin.
I'm having trouble controlling the volume of my pancreas.
Of my voice. Anyway, then your fasting insulin levels rise, but nobody's checking that, so you don't know. And post-meal blood sugar spikes get higher, but they also stay elevated for a longer period of time. So it's not unheard of to eat a carbohydrate-containing meal and have your blood sugar rise. That is normal physiology. That is what can happen. But as your muscles take in that glucose, the levels sharply go back down.
Yeah. For it to come down, it has to go somewhere other than my blood.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Don't gotta go home, but you can't stay here.
It's those circulating high insulin levels staying that keep the blood sugar high as well. And then your beta cells start to fatigue from the overwork. If you're producing more, they're going to start to fatigue from the overwork, and the A1C creeps up slowly, 5.5, 5.6. And then we slap that label of prediabetes on it. So yeah.
I keep going back to, these aren't just they're not like magical numbers, right? I mean, right. It's kind of like at 5.6, it's not I'm at 5.6 I'm okay, and 5.7
you just fall off the cliff, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, like, I imagine this is kind of a spectrum, right? In that the numbers, as I do air quotes, are really kind of just associated with when different, let's just say less desirable conditions start occurring. So like at 5'6" and 5'5", and this is the process, the insulin resistance that you're talking about has been going on for a while. This is, it's this creep towards diabetes is a decades long effort.
It can be, yes. Yeah. And I think it's important to understand how such things come about, because so it used to be there was no diagnosis of prediabetes, impaired glucose tolerance. All of this came with the idea of like this syndrome X people started thinking about syndrome X, and then it was this metabolic syndrome, which then it became like somewhat, it's all of an evolution of the research and different things that come out. But it was understood that it wasn't good enough to just have that A1C cutoff of 6.5 or, blood sugar, anytime blood sugar greater than 200 with symptoms. Like by the time people were diagnosed with diabetes, they had lost 50 to 70% of the insulin producing cells of their pancreas. And the ability to put diabetes into remission was drastically reduced. Right. Like it was almost unheard of at one point. Like it was too little too late. Mm-hmm. And so the institutions that look at such things, the American Diabetes Association, physicians that are like, we need to do better, endocrinologists, we want better for our patients, said, okay, how do we identify the people earlier? Because this is something that's been going on in the background before this diagnosis. We have to find a way to identify and try to help people earlier on. So in comes this cutoff, because they started to look at, okay, when do cardiovascular changes start to happen? When does insulin resistance begin? And they noticed, it's somewhere around that 5.7 to 6.4 A1C. In that range of individuals, they also had these cofactors, if you will. They had these other variables that looked like metabolic disease, that looked like things were not functioning as they should. So that's where you get the pre-diabetes diagnosis. Mm-hmm. But yes, it's all a continuum to this disease process.
It sounds like the creation of the PG-13 movie rating. Back when you and I were little kids.
You're such a movie buff. That's so for you to see the analogy there.
And until Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom came out,
such a good
and
movie.
A bunch of kids got traumatized because some dude's getting his heart pulled out of his chest in a PG movie. You're like, we probably need something in between there. So pre-diabetes.
Still, Raiders of the Lost Ark is the best one, though.
Pre-diabetes is the PG-13 of diagnosis.
Not very PG-13 though. Honestly.
I don't know.
Yeah, because
you can do a lot in a PG-13 movie.
Okay. Yeah, because by the time someone reaches an A1C of 5.7, as an example, beta cell function may already be reduced by 20 to 40%. So we're not even at 6.4. At 5.7, it can already be reduced 20 to 40%. And by the time people hit this official diabetes diagnosis at a 6.5 A1C, and I said this earlier, but just that's the 50% or less beta cell function. So it's not like that damage begins at 6.5 where you just fall off a cliff there. Yeah. And that's why that label was changed. And the truth is the biology does not recognize that arbitrary cutoff number. Those numbers came to light because of the biology. And so I think it's just not fully appreciated by many healthcare providers, the extent to which cardiovascular risk begins during prediabetes. And the American Diabetes Association notes that people with prediabetes have a significantly elevated risk of heart disease and stroke. Not will have once they become someone who has a diabetes diagnosis, but already at that prediabetes stage, they have significantly elevated risk of heart disease and stroke. And then neuropathy, that nerve damage, can begin about 6 years prior to diabetes diagnosis.
Really? That's something. Because, I mean, to me, that probably more than anything should be the get off your butt and make some changes, because in many cases that neuropathy is a one-way street. You might not get that function back. So if you're...
A lot of people can, but yes, sometimes no. Nerve damage could be more permanent. The changes to the retina can begin during pre-diabetes. But I think that in healthcare, there's this psychological line in the sand at 6.5%. And a lot of people who see their doctor and get told they have prediabetes, they think, oh, okay, I'm safe until I cross that line. But the truth is, in their biology, they've been crossing a lot of lines for a lot of years.
That line got crossed quite some time ago.
Right. And, if you could also think of that in terms of relationships. People don't end relationships or marriages or anything else. It's not like one day they're like, oh, it's done, or a job or anything. It's not like it's over. It is a gradual process of allowing other things to happen, of not meeting the other person halfway or not trying to understand their point of view. Any number of things that make it where it feels like it's just overnight, but it's never overnight. It's all a process. So it requires a total mind shift to put this into remission. I love what Dr. Greger says about this. I enjoy listening to his podcast quite a bit. And he points out that what we call normal sugar in Western society would be considered pre-diabetic by the standards of populations eating traditional plant-based diet, because a certain level of metabolic dysfunction is just so common. They've found the beginnings of atherosclerosis in toddlers in this country.
Goodness.
Yes. So it is just understood that if you have somebody in their mid-30s, they're going to have plaques that have built up in their arteries. It's really about how we look at it in Western society. So the other thing that bothers me, I guess I don't know if that's the best way to say it, but what I'm concerned about is the dismissal that comes with a prediabetes.
What do you mean?
Diagnosis. Like if somebody's told, oh, it's just prediabetes, or, we found your blood sugars are a little off, so you come back and we'll just keep a check on that and make sure you don't need any medicines right now necessarily.
Why don't they need medicines? Because I think in particular, I think metformin would help probably.
Yeah. And I think a lot of physicians would agree with you that an SGLT2 or a GLP-1 receptor agonist or metformin would be very helpful in the setting of prediabetes to kind of cut it off at the pass.
Right.
And the issue is insurance companies are typically not going to pay for that. Some of them have gotten on board with paying for metformin. And then you also have to look at the side effect profile, the risk
Yeah.
profile versus the benefit, the cost versus risk versus all benefit. And it's something that can be managed at that point through diet and exercise, through lifestyle changes. So there's, I guess, and I'm just speculating here, I guess there's a thing that insurance is like, we don't want to pay for something that could be fixed without meds. And on that same token, they're not going to pay for you to see a registered dietitian or a certified diabetes care and education specialist at that stage either.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of questions. Like for me, it just brings up so much rage.
I mean, like, so I guess what I'm getting at is like, I know that we're not big on preventative care, particularly in this country, but like pre-diabetes becomes type 2 diabetes.
All things remaining the same,
Yeah.
pre-diabetes will become type 2 diabetes. It might take 7 years, it might take 10, but it's like saying you're a little bit pregnant. There's no such thing. That baby's going to come.
I guess what I'm getting at is
eventually.
like, is it insurance companies are so obsessed with near-term profit that they don't see like this person is going to be a financial burden, even just from an insurability
standpoint. Yeah, because in 10
standpoint.
years you could have a different job, you could have a different insurance. Somebody else's problem at that point. What if you put all this money into prevention for someone for 15 years and then they go to a different company and you don't ever reap the benefits of all that prevention that you've paid for? Should it be that way? That word should, coming up again. No, but it is. And I feel like we're always going to struggle when we butt heads against what is, unless we look at how do we implement change? What can we control in that space? So, people don't receive a clear strategy when they're told they have prediabetes. They don't receive support or resources. But what they do receive oftentimes is permission to just keep doing exactly what they've been doing, which we know is not going to be a solution to anything.
Yeah.
And then it feels like you're blindsided with the diagnosis of type 2 diabetes. It feels like it just happened overnight, that you've been skirting it, you've been dodging and weaving, you've been Muhammad Ali in that,
I'm sorry, I just go back to the first heart attack wasn't so bad, but the 7th and 8th were a real wake-up call. It
didn't happen overnight. It was quietly progressing the entire time, while every healthcare provider around you was staying calm and reassuring that it's not diabetes yet. And sometimes that's not the truth, but too often, the majority of the time, it is. And I like to also use this analogy. If someone had stage 1 cancer, a doctor would never say, don't worry about it, come back when it's stage 3 and we'll start treatment. That would be considered neglect. That would be causing harm.
Right.
But metabolically, that's exactly what we do in this society, in physicians. It's wait until the disease has progressed significantly before it's taken seriously. And I think that's why the prediabetes diagnosis even came about. But then, so now you've labeled it so that you can recognize it, but what is actually being done about it? I applaud all of the steps that have been made to call it out, to say, hey, there's something happening before diabetes. But if you're not going to put resources and really work on that condition of prediabetes, then what are you even doing?
Right. Do you think that's because it's just because it does develop so slow? It's not like cancer where it can metastasize overnight, or it's not like, or if you've got, a certain blood pressure, you're at an imminent risk for a stroke or something like that.
Possibly, but I don't hold the viewpoint that it's slow necessarily, because sometimes it isn't. Same thing.
Well, it's slow compared to the two examples I just gave you,
okay,
which they see a lot of, right?
For sure.
So
yeah, because you have a healthcare system that does not prioritize prevention as a whole. And a 15 to 20 minute, 17 minute, the average primary care physician visit is 15 to 17 minutes. That does not allow for the kind of deep conversation that we're having right now. And it doesn't really allow for more than one thing at a time. In fact, I love my primary care physician. She is so amazing. Dr. Provost, if you're listening, hi. Amazing physician, cares deeply about the people that she sees so deeply. And still, it doesn't change the fact that she has 15 to 17 minutes per visit dictated by insurance reimbursement to keep that whole practice running, to employ the MAs and the nurses and the call center and the building and the mortgage and all the supplies. Like it doesn't allow for those kind of conversations. And half the time, the mindset of the person coming in, if you think about when you had your last annual appointment with your doctor, it was just like, let me just go in, check and make sure all my labs are good so I don't have something under the surface like cancer, something a lot of people are concerned about. Nothing's going on. I'm good. This is why a lot of men don't see their primary care physician, because it's like, I feel fine. Why would I need to go?
Yeah.
If I'm told I've got some terminal cancer, I don't even want to know. I'll just die. Gotta die
particularly
somehow.
if they're uninsured or they're paying out of pocket
or self-employed and self-insured. Even on a budget,
couple $100 I don't need to spend.
Exactly.
If something's,
a $75 copay looks wildly different to different individuals and different socioeconomic status.
Yeah.
It's wildly different. I feel like we've gone off, but we're still in the same.
Well, we're talking about why pre-diabetes doesn't get maybe the attention that it probably should to prevent a lot of the worst outcomes.
Right. Because people need to understand what is actually happening in their bodies. They deserve the truth delivered with compassion and, most importantly, with a plan. But I think I don't think it's emphasized enough in this. I don't think that heart disease and cholesterol and all, like there's so many things on the table. How do you prioritize which one? It also goes back to that decision matrix of urgent but unimportant is usually what wins, instead of the the non-urgent but important.
Yeah.
So we've established that prediabetes is more serious than people realize. So let's move on to the part that you usually take us into this.
What can we do to make prediabetes better?
Yes, the part that matters the most, because we can talk about the problems all day long, but I love my manager now in another area that I work in, and he is like, tell me all your problems, but also tell me the solutions that you've come up with. And I think that is the way to lead, So what matters most? Prediabetes is the most reversible stage of the disease. And that is the good news. That's the whole reason why there is even a diagnosis of prediabetes, because it was like, we need to identify this. We need to call it out. And in the stage that is the most reversible. So this is where your beta cells still have reserve. This is when your insulin production is still robust. This is when your pancreas is still working. You still got the beta cells. It is not exhausted. This is when weight loss yields dramatic improvements. This is when building muscle can really be that sponge to soak up the post-meal blood sugars floating around in your bloodstream. So it really transforms how your body handles glucose. This is when lifestyle intervention is most powerful.
And I'm assuming that this is all backed up by research.
Oh, no, I made it all up.
Well, just want to make sure. Tell the story.
Substantial research backs this up. The first one that comes to mind is just the diabetes prevention program, rigorously designed study, which showed a 58% reduction in progression to type 2 diabetes with lifestyle intervention alone. So 58%, pretty good odds, you know, with very modest changes. So what do I mean by modest changes? We're talking 7% body weight loss. So if you're someone who's 200 pounds, losing 14 pounds, and 150 minutes of physical activity per week. So not extreme dieting, not I'm going to start planning my marathon, but sustainable, achievable changes. And the American Diabetes Association now recommends that everyone with prediabetes be referred to an intensive lifestyle intervention program because they've seen the data and they know it works. So I think we were talking before about like insurance coverage. And I think oftentimes, like a lot of the reasons these guidelines are made are so that you have evidence to back the support of putting resources and finances behind this. So I hope with that recommendation that so if you have insurance, as many people do, you can advocate to see a registered dietitian and a certified diabetes care and education specialist and a physical therapist and say that I need this intervention.
Yeah, I'm kind of doing the math in my head now at it's 7% body. If we're talking 14 pounds, right? And at a modest caloric deficit, I can easily lose half a pound to a pound and a half a week safely. Right. I
don't like a full pound. I like a half a pound.
Okay.
Because you want to lose fat. So if you're losing fat, a pound of fat is 3,500 calories. So half of 3,500 is 750. I'm sorry, 1,750.
Half a pound a week, 14 weeks, a quarter. If you take this seriously, if you have just been diagnosed with prediabetes and you're like, okay, I'm going to knock this out.
I really like a half a pound to a pound a month. Sorry, I just want to throw that in there.
Okay.
Across time, because water weight
in a
fluctuates.
Quarter.
Yes.
This can be a thing in the past.
Mm-hmm.
This can be something that I almost had a scare at one point in time, but this is no longer a part of my future trajectory. You can turn it around that fast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
For sure. Absolutely. So it's really about having support, having the tools available because you've got more biological capacity to respond to those tools. And, we've not done a podcast on the case for plant-based dietary interventions because I feel like we got to really warm people up.
Because nobody wants to listen to that.
It's true.
Skip.
Right. Yes. I mean, I would listen to it, but I also recognize...
And you would make me listen to it.
Yes, but I also recognize that I am well aware of the data that supports it. Yeah. And I have been vegan, vegetarian, and everywhere in between since the kids were little. Judah's 19. So, for 15 years, I've been in the contemplation, let's do it, and back and forth stage, and gaining skills to be successful at it as well. And
full disclosure, we're probably closer to Mediterranean diet around our house.
We have fish. Like fish is not completely off the table. Usually just tuna fish, but but I try to not to. But that is neither here nor there. The main thing is you can begin to shift your mindset where the meat portion of the meal is not center stage at least one day a week, and then maybe 2 days a week. And we will have that podcast, because I think that it's important to cover some very common misconceptions about that, to speak of the differences between just avoiding meat and truly having a plant-based, plant-centered whole foods diet, because those are very different things. But anyway, these have been shown to have improvements in insulin sensitivity within days to weeks, not months to years. Days to weeks when you have plant-based dietary interventions, because your body wants to return to metabolic health. Given the right inputs, it responds remarkably quickly. But we have to give it those inputs, and we have to do it while we still have the metabolic flexibility to respond.
Okay, so what specifically do they need to do besides just being vegan? Because that's probably not step one.
Eat better and exercise.
Eat better and exercise. The same thing that we say just about every single
No,
week.
we don't say that, because that's not specific.
Yeah.
Just do it. So the Nike slogan doesn't really work when it comes to lifestyle change, specifically in the area of changing the quality of your nutrition and the quality of your movement.
Okay, so what's a very specific change that they can make to what they're eating and to what they're doing this week?
Yes. I think awareness of anything is key. So I would say first, get the right test. So most people only get their fasting glucose level tested when they go for their annual lab. So I say get your A1C checked and ask for a fasting insulin lab, because I think a fasting insulin level is incredibly valuable and rarely ordered. And my friend Jen was just talking to me yesterday about Jelly Roll's podcast, where his A1C was always fine for years. He'd been dodging a diabetes diagnosis, but then he had, according to Jen, some lab tests done that showed his levels were really high, like 400, which I would guess are circulating insulin levels. I haven't listened to that particular episode that she linked me yet. I will listen to it. But that's probably what it was that came back high. But fasting insulin can reveal insulin resistance years before your glucose numbers become abnormal. So ask your doctor about it. Yeah. If they refuse to order it, or they don't know what you're talking about, they don't know how to order it, you can often get it through direct-to-consumer lab services.
Just anecdotally, I did ask my physician at the VA, and they would not do it. They're very specifically not going to give you anything that's not on their very prescriptive. These are the things that we test for these kind of stuff. So that's
and the VA is a different animal.
But I'm just saying, for the military or prior service folks that are listening to this podcast, this is probably something you have to do out of pocket if you're.
Yeah, it might be something you need to do out of pocket. But my understanding is it's pretty affordable. If you want to look that up real fast, or no?
Nope.
Okay. Google is free, I guess, so you can look and see where that's available. But I looked at it when we did a podcast months and months ago. I remember it being pretty affordable. But okay, second, understand that movement is mandatory, especially resistance training. The American Diabetes Association recommends at least 150 minutes per week of moderate intensity aerobic activity, plus resistance training at least 2 days per week. So oftentimes, like, what does that mean? What is moderate intensity aerobic activity? That would be brisk walking where you can still, it's kind of like the talk test. Like, you can still talk, but it might be like, hey, I went over and I went to Becky's house and we went to go shopping over here, so you can have a conversation. And maybe it's a little bit before the level that I just did a demonstration of, but you can talk still. And if it's usually about 50% of your maximum heart rate, if you want to kind of check in with your heart rate and see where that is. So to get your maximum heart rate, you could do 220 minus your age. So my maximal heart rate comes back to, I think, like 172, something like that. We
just had this conversation with one of the people we work. The best thing to do, get an actual stress test done that will tell you your true maximal heart rate, because it can vary.
But that I would not say that's the best thing to do. The best thing to do is just take 220 minus your age, because for the math for mine, it comes out to like 172, and my true max heart rate is probably 180 to 182. But it's pretty darn close. And then so half of that number would be a good level, 40 to 50% of that would be a good level to be at for this activity. So you could just take 2 fingers, put them at your carotid artery, you put it on your neck, time yourself for 6 seconds and multiply that by 10. That's probably the easiest way to do.
I think the easiest way is probably perceived exertion, truthfully.
True, yeah.
Because most people don't have the heart rate monitor. And
right.
I mean, so if you're truly starting out, just plug it somewhere about 50 to 70%, right?
Yeah.
It's not 100%.
40 to 50, not 50.
From a perceived exertion standpoint, 50 to 70% is going to get you in that window.
Yep.
It's a brisk walk. It's some maybe light athletic activity,
dancing,
that kind of stuff.
Gardening continuously.
Pickleball, if you're one of those individuals.
Yes, doubles tennis, any of those would be that moderate activity. So we're talking 30 minutes, 5 days a week. Or 150 minutes a week. And I think it's important to also, if you've gone 2 days without doing something, do something. That's a good rule of thumb. Like, don't let it get beyond 2 days of inactivity.
You highlighted the strength training component of that, or really be more specific, muscle building component of that. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
I think you can talk about that pretty well. I think that you've got a good handle on that, and you can share, because I think it goes back to the fact that your muscles are the sponge to soak in that post-meal glucose. So if you build muscle mass, you have a better capacity to do that. If you train your muscles, if you train them, you have more glucose, what we call point of care, you have more glucose where it's needed, which is in the muscle. Yeah.
This is do things that are challenging, move heavy stuff, the little 5 pound dumbbell, or just bicep.
You can start there for sure. You can start with resistance bands.
I disagree. Get yourself in front of the kitchen sink and squat down as low as you can and come back up. And do that until
you're agreeing.
What's that?
So you're agreeing that you can just start low.
No.
And work up.
What I'm not agreeing with is the little, if you're, let me put it this way, if your dumbbells are plastic and colored, you're probably going to need something a little bit heavier, right? Really, if it's me and I'm prescribing, I want your big movers doing some stuff. I want heavier weight
your legs,
from a low position,
i.e. your legs and your butt.
Up.
That's what that means.
I love a deadlift. I think the deadlift's probably the best lift, period. But for those of you that aren't in the gym and don't know what a deadlift is, when you get down low to pick up that basket of laundry and you pick it up and you move with it from there, from the low position to the up position,
squat down and lift it with your legs, not your back.
For your construction workers, if you're getting a generator onto the back of the truck, it's going from a low position to a high position. you're going to have to plan on doing something that's going to really fatigue my muscles in a short period of time. So this is not the longer walks or the outside sessions. This is, I'm intentionally really challenging my body in small doses, but challenging my body, doing hard stuff, picking up heavy stuff.
2 days a week, which even I can work on that because I got 1 day a week pretty square, but that second day, some other activities get in the way of just lifting weights. So I'm called out there. It's okay. So third, we're going to prioritize fiber. We have a whole episode on fiber. I think we do, right? I
Yes,
feel like
we absolutely do. Fiber is the new protein.
There we go.
We got a lot of guff for it. There are apparently some protein advocates that did not think that.
And we weren't saying it replaced.
Well, no, hold on.
protein.
There were some protein advocates that did not listen to the podcast that were having some issues with the title. Listen to the podcast.
Right. Okay. So you've got a very strong association with fiber intake and diabetes risk. So you have a higher fiber intake, typically the lower your risk. And the American Diabetes Association recommends at least 14 grams of fiber. Now, before you interject, per 1,000 calories consumed. I saw your eyes like light up like, what? No. So if you're on a 2,000 calorie diet, that would be 28 grams of fiber. So it's about 25 to 35 grams daily for most people. But most Americans get about 15 grams. So that's a very significant gap between the recommendation and what most people get, really 10 to 15
Amber
grams.
recommends as an ambitious goal
40 to 50 grams of fiber.
Which is totally doable.
And if you want a party trick of being able to poop on command, that's 100 grams of fiber a day.
Yeah. I got up to 90. It was something. I wouldn't advocate 90. 50's fine.
You didn't know
50's
you were
fine.
listening to that kind of podcast. Sorry. The main thing is that fiber slows glucose absorption. It feeds beneficial gut bacteria. Your gut is more and more great research coming out about the immunity in your gut. So you want to slough off the cells and get good turnover there. It's going to improve your feelings of fullness. Not glamorous, but incredibly effective. So fourth would be reducing ultra-processed foods, especially refined carbohydrates. Now, I want to be very careful here because we also have a podcast called The Case for Carbohydrates. So I am absolutely not anti-carbohydrate, but I am pro whole food carbohydrates like beans, intact whole grains. And what I mean by that is you have not stripped the bran and stripped the psyllium husk. You have not refined that grain. Fruits, vegetables.
What about a baked potato or a sweet potato?
Sure. These are all associated with better metabolic health. But ultra-processed foods, those engineered to make you eat more than you really need to eat, those are metabolic sabotage. Very different things between those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a good rule of thumb for this one. And we got another episode on ultra processed foods.
Yes, we do.
If you can't make it, it's
if
probably
not in your kitchen.
It's probably ultra processed.
Food. Fifth, protect your sleep. Constantly overlooked factor to insulin sensitivity, because just a few nights of sleep deprivation or inadequate sleep measurably worsens insulin sensitivity. And the American Diabetes Association also acknowledges sleep as a factor in diabetes risk. So you want to aim for 7 to 8 hours and really make it a priority, not an afterthought. I think that's really key If you go to bed early enough, then you tend to have better sleep than sleeping late. So whatever might be preventing you. We had someone we worked with once that always watched the 11 o'clock news. And it's like, could you watch the news at a different time of day? Oh yeah, I catch it in the midday and I'm like, is there that much changed from the midday news to the 11 o'clock
kids these days are going to either ask like, what's the news? Or the news is on 24/7. Why do you have to watch it at 11 o'clock?
Right. I know. I know. It's fun to tell them that we're older than Google.
Yeah.
Huh.
We were born in a previous millennia.
So sixth, aim for meaningful weight loss if appropriate. So we talked about just a 7% weight loss can improve this. So for many people with prediabetes, losing 5 to 10% of body weight can be transformative.
Yeah.
So that's 10 to 20 pounds for somebody weighing 200 pounds, not extreme weight loss. We don't want to lose muscle or bone mass. That's your lean body mass. You don't want to lose that.
But also, this is not a cleanse. I'm not going to do something this week to try and do, you're going to have to really focus for about a quarter. And if you can do that, if you can be diligent with what's going in your mouth and with the increasing the way or the amount that your body's moving, you're going to have amazing results.
Yeah.
We're just talking
about doing enough
consistent for about a quarter.
Yes, we want to shift the trajectory.
Yeah.
That is it. I think of those railroad cars where they pull I'm aging myself. You pull the lever and the track be quiet. And the track goes mostly on cartoons, okay? But you pull the lever and the track goes the other way. Oh.
Are you referring to Snidely Whiplash and Dudley Do-Right as featured on Rocky and Bullwinkle?
I might be referencing some of that, maybe. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So we are not talking about whole life overhaul. I mean, that might work for you. If you feel like you're an all or nothing person, by all means, go do it. But it's much more sustainable and realistic if you just look at what one thing will really move the needle and do that one thing, hyper-focus there. Because this is really about recalibrating your nutrition, recalibrating your movement, not deprivation, not punishment, just really small, consistent changes that compound over time.
Okay. What about mindset? How can they shift their mindset around prediabetes?
Yeah. So if you receive a diagnosis of prediabetes, you have a choice. You can choose to interpret it as this isn't serious. I'll deal with it later. Or if you know someone that has that mindset around it, you can ask really good questions, send them this podcast, gently probe, get curious, not accusatory. Or you can choose to understand that that's very valuable information. Your body is telling you something important. And so you could say, I now have the power in how I'm going to respond. My body is saying there's some things going on behind the scenes that you need to be aware of, or your business is going to go bankrupt, or you're not going to be able to pay the mortgage, whatever it is. Like there's something going on there. You need to do something different or it's going to get worse. The research supports option 2. Unequivocally, that's the option. So prediabetes is not a label to fear. It is a signal, an early warning system.
Which is really why the category was created in the first place.
Exactly. Because if you catch it right there, if you respond, Now you may never experience progressive beta cell decline.
Mm-hmm.
You may never need a medication, and then another one, and then another one, and then insulin.
Mm-hmm.
You may never face the complications that make diabetes so devastating.
Yeah.
And they
you're,
are.
You're not
very
losing
clear
your
about that.
kidneys at the prediabetes phase. You're not losing your.
Nope.
You're not going blind in the prediabetes phase. You're not getting stuff amputated in the prediabetes phase. Those are kind of the real big ones that once you start getting into those years-long sustained high blood sugars, are not. It's not guaranteed that that's not going to happen. In fact, that gets to be increasingly likely.
So every year of delay reduces your metabolic flexibility, and acting early makes it easier. So every month that you intervene and you do something different puts a little identity chip in that says, I am this person that does something different. I am a person who moves. I am a person who chooses foods that are healthier for me. It builds momentum in the right direction. So prediabetes is actually a blessing. It is a way to know that you've got something going on. It's the best time to identify that there's something early in the process, and it's early enough to win the fight against diabetes.
Yeah, as we've been kind of preparing for this episode, the analogy that comes to mind for me is if there was a fire in my kitchen, I wouldn't wait until half the house is on fire to call the fire department. But that's exactly what's going to happen at your doctor's office if you have diabetes. They're basically going to say, we're not really going to mandate anything until it's full-blown type 2 diabetes. But at that point, you're at about 50% beta cell dysfunction.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you just, as soon as you knew that something was wrong, start to take action to correct that? Because just like the burning house, it's probably pretty easier to take care of a little kitchen fire with a fire extinguisher. Half the house is on fire. You're going to need the fire truck and all that, and you might lose the structure. Yes. The house might come down.
And when you're diagnosed with prediabetes, I think they're also saying, this is not my area of expertise.
Yeah.
Whether they tell you that, I've never heard a physician say that so directly, but that is really the truth. That is not.
I'm not an endo. Yeah.
That is not their area of expertise. Well, even beyond being an endocrinologist, lifestyle change is not the primary care physician's area of expertise. They fix what is broken. They help keep diseases in check. That our healthcare system doesn't focus on primary. There's a lot of research, especially in the cardiovascular space, on primary prevention. So I don't want to say they don't focus on primary prevention, but I would say they don't focus on lifestyle modification towards primary prevention. It's more about medication intervention to primary prevention, but not lifestyle modification. So if you have been told you have prediabetes, this is not your moment to relax. It is your moment to lean in. If you've been told don't worry about it, we'll check again next year, I want you to hear a very different message.
Well, Amber said.
Delivered, right. Tell your physician, Amber said, you better do something. Please don't. Or do, it's fine. They can call me. This is treatable. This is reversible. And you have more power over this outcome than almost any other health condition. You really have all of the power, and this is the stage because that power diminishes with time.
Yeah.
I tell people who have a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, who've been diagnosed for years, even once you've been diagnosed with diabetes, even those first 5 years of diagnosis, you have better outcomes than after the subsequent first 5 years. It's all time based. And it doesn't mean that after 5 years, it's hopeless for you. Not at all. It just means it's going to be harder, exponentially harder. It doesn't mean you can't do it. The earlier you act, the more reversible this is.
And I think that's hopeful in a space that does not have there's not deeply a lot of people talking about diabetes or even pre-diabetes getting better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I hope that's inspired you. And thanks for coming to laugh with us. Yeah. And I hope that you can find some inspiration and find a new up-leveling of your identity here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Diabetes Podcast.
If this episode reframed prediabetes for you, share it with someone who needs an early wake-up call. Remember, this is the most reversible stage, and small, consistent changes compound, especially now. Ask for the right labs, move regularly, build some muscle, prioritize fiber, protect your sleep, and aim for meaningful but realistic weight loss. Advocate for yourself too. Request referrals to lifestyle programs, registered dietitians, and diabetes educators. If you enjoyed this episode, please take the time to give it a like and leave a review. This really helps to promote and sustain this free podcast and to get the word out to the millions of people worldwide that are struggling with type 2 and prediabetes, letting them know that remission is possible if you take action today. And if you have additional questions or need additional support, reach out to us at support@empowerdiabetes.com. Until next time, take courage. You can do this, and we can help.